The accessibility framework comes from our Enhancing Math course, which was developed by the Education Development Center. It is designed as a collaborative course for teams of general and special education teachers, as it focuses on building a partnership of learning and teaching with these two groups. Both have important roles in educating students with learning disabilities, and this course brings them together to work on strategies and plan for shared students. For more information on the course, you can look for it under our Partner Learning tab on the AltShift website. The first step of the framework is the consideration of the math and the student. There are two parts to considering the math. The first is looking at the goals of the lesson. What do students need to be able to do when this lesson is complete? Look at objectives, outcomes, and how they will be assessed. For example, maybe the goal is that students will be able to identify a pattern and write an equation to represent that pattern. The second part is looking at the task demands of the lesson. What are we asking students to be able to do during the lesson or activity? It is also important to think about the pre-skills needed. For example, the task demands may be that students have to extend a pattern, draw a pattern, or understand what a pattern is. Think about the task demands as things students need to be able to do to accomplish the lesson. Next, we will look at the student. Let's start with the student's strengths. We can analyze both academic strengths and behavioral strengths. Is he or she organized? Does he or she articulate thoughts well? Are different strategies used when problem solving? Is this student a hard worker? And then look at the difficulties in the same way. What does the student struggle with currently or in the past? What pre-skills need to be developed? Again, these can be academic or behavioral. Does he or she struggle to draw or create things on paper? Is the student easily frustrated and gives up? Does he or she have a hard time making connections or generalizations? It may help to look at the work that a student does in class to analyze the different tasks and see where the student is capable and where support is needed. The next part of the framework brings the math and student considerations together. We now want to look for barriers that students may encounter within this lesson. It is important to think about barriers as being separate from the students. Barriers do not lie within the student, but rather they are external and could cause difficulty for the student. Asking yourself, where could this student potentially get hung up, or what may cause frustration within the lesson, is a good start. You can also ask, how will I be assessing this math goal, and how has the student performed in the past with these activities? An example of a barrier for a student who struggles with reading would be, this activity is text heavy, or there's a lot of text for the student to read, versus saying, the student struggles with reading. The final step in the framework is to plan and implement the accessibility strategies. When brainstorming strategies, it's a great idea to consult a colleague. Whether you are the math teacher reaching out to the special education teacher or vice versa, bouncing ideas off of one another could really help the process. Once you've determined which strategies you think will fit the lesson, be sure to check that expectation for students haven't fallen. The next step is to think about if you will use this strategy from the beginning of the lesson or keep it in your pocket until it is needed. Whether you will offer it to some students or all students. There may be students struggling without being noticed that these strategies could really help to make connections that would have otherwise been missed. Finally, decide how you will measure the success of the supports and the lesson. It is important to reflect on how the lesson and supports went and make notes for future considerations. I encourage you to share what you've learned with your colleagues to see how these planning documents could assist students in your classroom as well as others. You can also email me with any questions you may have directly. My email address is briana.bancroft@altshift.education. Thanks for watching.